Okay, welcome everyone. This is the School District of Prescott Board of Education regular meeting. We have been in closed session since 6 p.m. We will just quickly recap here. The board approved and took action and approved the following items in closed session: an increase to custodial pay scales, continuation of the COVID-19 FFCRA model until March 31st, 2021, and the pilot program that was implemented following the 2019-20 teachers' performance pay scales for teachers to receive a payout for unused days that will be honored for the 2020-21 academic year and beyond. And more communication will follow from the administration in the coming months on those items. We are on item D, recognition of visitors. We don't have the Pledge of Allegiance in here, so we should. Okay, is there anybody that would care to be recognized at this time? I'm looking up there. So, okay. All right, let's move on to item E, good news from around the district. Rick?
I'm going to defer my comments to the end, and so we'll start with our student rep, Maddie. It's so good to be in person and to see students with us.
This week, the Student Council inducted new freshman Student Council members. We had some vacancies on the council. Some other things that we worked on this week was hearing student feedback and comments in regards to the hybrid schedule and keeping students motivated. So we're working on plans for that.
And then I'm going to have the principals come up. If you could line up after with Josh at the front, and then just one after another, just give a quick update with regards to good things happening in the district.
Good evening, Josh Figge, Prescott High School principal. Really excited to announce that our Fab Lab grant submission was successfully completed and submitted at the tail end of December by Mr. Schmidt. Thank you guys for supporting that, and a big shout out to Mr. Schmidt as well. And our community partners, he was going around to a lot of community partners getting support. I think our biggest one was Diversified Manufacturing Corporation, who was very, very gracious. Mr. Ram donating $5,000 for match over there. So whenever we can start to create some of those partnerships and strengthen those things, we always really appreciate it. So thank you to DMC. One of the other things I want to touch on, we asked our teaching staff and our support staff to submit to us before our winter break this year, just like we did last year, student celebrations, success stories, students who had kind of risen above or strived or made some huge strides in their academics or social emotionally, things like that. And then we reached out to those families and parents and tried to celebrate. Mr. Smith and I have a goal to do 100 calls before the Christmas break, and we did end up making our goal this year. So we had 100 students who we celebrated and wanted to recognize their families, and we're just pretty proud of that for our staff and our students. So thank you.
Mr. Igo.
Good evening, members of the board. I want to start off by saying our main piece of good news is that we have students back in the building. We are back in the hybrid mode. Last Tuesday, our first day with students back in the building, our teachers came up and we're talking about how great it felt to be more normal and to be back doing what they really have a passion for is working directly with kids and having kids in front of them. So congratulations to the teachers for again pulling it off and making everything work, and thank you to our students. They've been awesome being back. I think they really enjoy again being at school, and it really has been great. The other bit of good news is we just had our PD day this past Monday. And we are starting to kick the rust off of some of our curricular processes again. Our social studies department met as a 612 group, had a great meeting to get their curriculum review process off and running again. So I am excited to see our curriculum review with our social studies team. Thank you.
Mark Inouye with Student Services.
Good evening. I just wanted to echo what Mr. Igo said about the PD day we just had this Monday. Obviously there's a lot going on, but the special ed team still found time to sit down and review some student data, talk about kind of some things that we could do strategy-wise to just really help with our students as far as engagement and academic performance. So again, with a lot going on, I really just want to commend the special education team and the student services team about just taking the time to review things and to work on making things better. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, Activities Director.
I want to celebrate some good news around the district here at the high school in terms of activities. Kind of in the winter season, some are kind of hitting different strides. Some are just starting up, and some are kind of winding down here for the postseason. Our varsity wrestling team has their regional tournament to start WIA postseason on the 23rd. That'll be coming up here pretty quick, so excited for them to do that. Our girls basketball team is currently 9-0 in conference, looking to defend their conference title. And at their home game next Tuesday, our dance team will perform at halftime, their first performance of the winter here, so that's pretty exciting. And then we have our high school forensics team. We'll be hosting our home virtual tournament here on the 30th. So a lot of different things going on to celebrate here in the district. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. Michael Kozmowski.
Prescott Intermediate, as Dr. Spuzza has the pictures up, our sledding hill is open and being utilized. We were glad to get some snow. The kids have been patiently waiting that. Big thank you to Johnson Construction, who does the plowing for us, to work with us and make us part of that hill, and then leave some, move some snow around that they normally don't move around, to have some structure for our students to play on. Big congratulations to our students that advanced to represent our intermediate school for the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Speech Contest at the county level. And if they advance, they'll go to the state level. But at 5th grade, we have 5 students: Kiera Link, Arlo Deutsch, Scarlett Butler, Ayla Peterson, and Maren Zwiffel. And just a big thank you to Ms. Jansen working with the high school forensics students. We recorded our speeches in class, and the students took a look at them and gave us critical feedback and provided us with some rating and judging, and that's how we got to that. So a good partnership with the high school forensics team as well.
And Sarah Dusick.
And as the pictures are up of sledding, I know I have teachers who have come to me and they're trying to figure out ways to think outside the box and get kids out of the classroom to just give them some enjoyment in a crazy year when they can't have field trips. And I know there's a lot of teachers who are planning a walking field trip to MIS to take advantage of the sledding hill that you see up there too. So my good news is kindergartners in Mrs. Calabrese's class became authors and illustrators this week. They published a book called We Can Change the World: Kindness Through the Eyes of a Kindergarten Class, and they're just so fun to sit and read through. And then the other good news that we have is we're in the middle of getting the initial results back from our FastBridge assessments for our winter assessments. And in a year where we didn't know what to expect, we're pleasantly surprised with the results that we're seeing so far and the progress that students are making, even with the parameters that we have in place because of COVID. So exciting stuff.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. This is the first meeting that we've had since January 1st occurred. So Happy New Year to our community, our families, and students. I did want to share that at this time, typically, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards and school administrators have a joint convention down in Milwaukee. Obviously, because of COVID, it is now currently virtual, and so we are not down there participating. But it's a great professional development opportunity. And I know that we had 2 boards members that represented the district in different ways with regards to voting on possible legislation, and that was our president and vice president. So Steve Sizemore, vice president, representing through CISA 11, and Mike Matzik. Did want to mention also that they were both recognized, and so I'm going to look to Mike Matzik. There are 2 black envelopes and pins, and if you could just share the acknowledgement for you and Steve for years of service.
Sure. I don't know what this is, but it's for being, let's see here, Certificate of Achievement, awards level 3 to me, Mike Matzik, for demonstrating a high level of commitment to Wisconsin public school students.
All right.
And then Steve's is for only level 2.
I want to see these on your signatures on the email exchanges.
But very similar award from the WASB for recognizing Steve's commitment on the school board.
And I also, at the end of, just before winter break, we had an opportunity to have a meeting, and I came across a best-selling book. And so, Mike, if you would, this is a shared gift from me to the board and also to Beth Linderholm, who assists as a liaison between the school board and the superintendent.
I also don't want to miss out on Tanya's award. She's also she was recognized by the WASB for reaching her level 2 status as well. So congratulations, Tanya.
Thanks, guys.
Trying to open up my Christmas present here. I'll do it later.
Hey, can I get a VHS of that?
Robert's Rules of Order, thank you. Because I need that.
So, that is hot seller.
I should read it, really.
And then I just wanted to end with two things. The Packard family did donate $1,300 to the Prescott School District and earmarked it towards the football team. And then I wanted to, a heartfelt thank you. On the Malone Elementary electronic board, you will see a message every day that says, "Heroes work here." We are in the 10th month of dealing with a pandemic. I can't be prouder of the administrative team that sits before me, the district office, our teachers, bus drivers, food service, custodians, our EAs, all the ancillary and support staff. Our parents and the community, I know this is hard. It's challenging for leadership. It's challenging for the school board, but I want to thank you for the partnership over these 10 very difficult months. We have some good news that we will be sharing with regards to the rollout of vaccinations for our staff and what that may mean for being able to get our schools open 5 days a week. But the worst isn't over, and we still have to be judicious in some of the decisions. So we will, at the end of the meeting, during discussion, we have our nurse here that will be Cassie Butler. They'll be assisting us, talking about the protocols that we have in place and will continue to have in place through the end of the year. We will also talk about athletics and spectators through WIA, and we'll have Matt Smith present that. And A.Z. Snyder will be joining us. She is currently meeting with the school board of Elmwood and has been meeting with all the school boards across the Pierce County. And so she and Cassie will kind of be giving you an update about vaccinations and where we sit with the decisions that we have in place. So thank you to everybody. Hang in there, and we'll get through this if we stick together. So thank you.
All right, let's move on to item F, school business. First item is the consent agenda. We have minutes, board checks, and a personnel update in the consent. Is there anything that the board would like to have removed from consent? If not, I will adopt the consent agenda. Are there any objections? Considering there are no objections, the consent agenda is adopted. Move to item 2, retirement.
Yes, at this time, we have a longstanding employee, Deb Carlson, our elementary music teacher. Unfortunately, wasn't able to be on stage here at winter break, but she has announced her retirement. Her letter was provided, and her energy and working with the kids will be certainly missed, but obviously well-deserved and long-time employee here in good standing.
Connie, any questions, comments?
No, I wish her the best of luck in her future, and I know her and her family have been a service to our community for a long time, so congratulations.
Maddie, any comments?
No problem.
Pat?
No, thank you, and good luck.
Steve?
Yeah, no, Deb, she'll be missed. I know, I just remember those concerts, and she's just so animated and always smiling with the kids, just great attitude, and thanks to her and her family, they've all had a significant involvement in the district over the years.
Vicki?
Just wish her luck and, yeah, have fun in retirement.
Yeah, Deb, congratulations on your retirement. And we're going to miss the Christmas concerts that you put on. They're a lot of fun. Hope you have a good retirement, and congratulations. We'll take a motion.
I'll move to accept retirement of Deb Carlson, elementary music teacher, at the end of the 2021 school year.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. All right, item 3, consider second reading of these Neola policies.
Yes. Beth, do you want to help come and just introduce the topics and explain how we process first reading and second reading?
Yeah, this is a second reading too, Beth, so you can keep it concise if you want.
Thanks, Mike. Sounds great. So yes, consider second reading of the Neola policies. These are brought forward from last month when you did the first reading. These are what we considered our phase 2, or I'm sorry, level 2 or level 3, where there might have been additional options that were needed to be identified within a policy. I'll particularly call out the third one bullet there, the English language proficiency, as an example, and also noting that it might have been the wrong link on it from the December board meeting, to have that new one. Thank you, Pat. I know you brought that to our attention. So I'm sure you've all reviewed that as well as the edits. And then also from December's follow-up policy 8395, student mental health services. We had a further discussion on last month on just some of the items for the bullets. Tanya, if you recall, that was one we wanted to add in, option A, I believe. So if you had time to review that one, that was the only policy that we did then incorporate that change from December's conversation. So if they're all ready, you may proceed.
Steve, any questions?
I have none.
Vicky?
No.
Pat?
None.
Tanya?
I have none.
Maddie, any questions on policies?
No.
All right. I don't have any questions either, so we'll take a motion.
I'll move to,
Go ahead, Steve.
criminy. Hang on, wait, I'm almost there. Okay, there we go. I move to approve the second reading of the Neola policies listed.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That carries. Item 4, notice of open enrollment programs that are closed due to DPI guidelines. And we're going straight to Mr. Anyway?
Correct.
Fantastic. Well, you guys hear from me on this every year, so this will somewhat sound like a broken record, because there really is not a lot of changes. Essentially, every January, DPI requires us to kind of, as a school board, determine the number of open enrollment slots that are available in a district. And unless we indicate here, we're fully open. So there are a couple programs that we have historically closed and will continue, or I would recommend that we continue to close. The only, I think, difference between this year and last year is we have opened up our programming for students with significant needs at the intermediate school. So we are continuing to recommend a closure of our middle school and high school programs for students with significant needs, as well as a number of our contracted services. So PT, we contract with Baldwin Woodville. We contract with CISA 11 for visual impairments and CISA 10, I believe, for orientation and mobility. So those are the programs that I would recommend that we close for this upcoming school year.
All right, Steve, any questions on these?
No, sir.
Vicky?
I don't have any.
Pat?
No questions.
Tanya?
No questions.
Maddie, any questions on this? All right. Thank you, Mr. Anyway.
You bet.
We can entertain a motion. This is a long one.
Okay, I got it. Maybe. I move to approve the closing of the 2021-2022 open enrollment in the following areas. Programs for students in grades 6 through 12 plus with significant needs, which is defined as those who require instruction based on the Common Core essential elements, alternative curriculum, an extensive amount of pull-out instruction based on their IEP, transition vocational programming, and/or substantial levels of attendant core care based on physical health, cognitive, or behavioral needs. EC through 12th grade programming for students who qualify with visual impairments, all students that require related services of physical therapy, and all students that require the related services of orientation and mobility per the guidelines outlined in the supporting documents. Open enrollment for all other areas of special education, as well as K through 12 regular education programming, are open for the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Item 5, consider approval of the 2021-22 school calendar.
Yes, I'm going to ask Michael Kozmowski to come forward. This was presented in December, and he'll have an update for you.
Yeah, so back in December, we presented this. Again, it was shared with the full staff and given an opportunity to provide feedback. We did not get any feedback after the last school board meeting on the calendar. Again, we had vetted this through the PLC leadership, where they were able to take a look and provide feedback and required to give us feedback on it, as well looking at both the strengths and ways to improve. And a couple of the strengths that really stuck out was the fact that we were going to be able to be done with students before May. Was a big strength that the staff liked, to give them that few extra days off before summer school would potentially start. And just the balance of the overall calendar. So there weren't a lot of comments by the staff on it as well. It kind of, sometimes the calendars just fall into place, and this is definitely one of them.
Tanya, have any questions on the calendar?
No?
None. Maddie, you like the calendar? It looks good. Pat?
No questions.
Steve?
I can't come up with any, sorry.
Vicky?
No questions.
All right. Again, yeah, this is great. School's getting done before the Memorial Day weekend, so if we have no further dialogue, we can take a motion.
I move to approve the calendar for the 2021-2022 academic school year calendar.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
That was an aye for 4, I'm guessing, so I got a little bit opposed. That carries. And on to item 6, consider referendum of voter-approved sale of bonds for building repairs and maintenance.
All right. So we are back to kind of walk through with our community some of the things that we've been doing since August of, well, actually, it was in spring of 2019 when we engaged with a corporation called SDS Architects and Apex Engineering. They did an extensive audit of Mike Hoyka's annual reports and 10-year span, kind of following the ASHRAE guidelines with regards to mechanical and infrastructure, kind of the age of our roofs, our boilers, electronics, and presented that to you in August of 2019. In addition, we started to look at some other efficiencies and instructional enhancements with our classrooms, and making sure that the buildings that were built in 1969, 1963, and then obviously the renovation of the middle school from 1920, 1950, and then 2004, still fit and matched the grade levels that we were working with. We did do a survey with school perceptions. At this point, it was close with regards to the support, but it wasn't sufficient enough for us to say that the community at this point in time, context of the economics and also for the district, I think we need to, in December, we came back to you and shared that administration and Mike Hoyka would be putting forward that we should only focus on the essential needs of things that need to be done. And so we have put forward for you just to look at the history of the referendums in Prescott Public Schools from the turn of the 2000. From 2000 to 2016, In that period of time, 18 questions were asked of the community. You can see when we put schoolhouse that was a capital investment into a building. And then with the yellow shading, that's with a pencil and ruler, that's showing that we were doing an excess of the revenue limit from basically 1993 that capped the number of dollars that schools could receive to educate its students. As you can see, those are kind of spaced out across time. The reason we share this is since 2016, the school board has not gone to the voters to ask for finances. The last time you asked the community to invest in Malone Elementary and the intermediate school was in 1994 and 2004. So we are approaching 20 and 30 years since the community has been asked to invest in infrastructure that has limits on how long they'll function. Our boilers, our roofs are coming to age. We now have rooms and schools where we do have water infiltration, and it's our recommendation that the board seriously consider. You've had the numbers, you know that it definitely exceeds an annual budget. And so there is a point in time where we will have to ask the community to support the investment in our facilities. We know that good schools create good communities create good schools. It's a reciprocal aspect, and we think we have a good partnership with our community. Here are some of the timelines that just kind of walk you through from left to right. We started out in May 2019. We've gone through and presented the information to you. It's been posted on our website. We have information that people can see for the full report. We are currently in the bottom right of January 2001, and this would be the month, if you wanted to be able to go for a referendum, that you would have to make that declaration for an April election. There are also elections in February of 2022 and April 2022. We will be asking for you to signal to the community that you understand kind of the reports that have been provided and that the conveyor belt doesn't really end once you make the decision. But in order for Mike and myself and Renee to give you financial budgets and then to kind of look at the scope of work that would be accomplished and the breadth of the work that would be accomplished, we know that things are going to continue to age across time. And so by helping identify whether or not you're going to be asking the community to support a capital referendum, it would be helpful to kind of know which year and time frame you would be going to the voters to do so. With that, I'll stop and see if you have any questions or clarifications. Otherwise, we are looking for kind of the board to declare one of 3 dates to kind of signal to the community and then allow us to organize our next steps.
All right, Tanya, you want to start? You got any questions on anything here? Comments?
Sure, I'll start. Thanks for the timeline. And yeah, we've been talking about this for quite some time. We did a survey. We understand that the community is not ready to invest in kind of some redesign type elements. But we still have some of the structural pieces that we need to do, and we don't have the budget to do it. So I believe we absolutely need to go forward to referendum. And if I were to choose a time, and I'd love to hear what my colleagues have to say, I'm looking at that February of 2022, personally. One, because I don't want to have to come back a second time. I'd rather kind of do what we need to do at once. And also, if something doesn't pass or we need to rework it, April gives us enough time to come back if we need to. So that's my general thought. No questions.
Okay. Pat?
I'm going to echo everything Tanya said. My opinion is February of 2022 as well for all the same reasons.
Steve?
Well, I would I would be cautious regarding the turnaround to April 5th. I don't know if that really gives us enough time to turn around and do something or not, but I agree with the February 15th date. Keeping in mind, this gives us, before we have to have the referendum completed in public, 10 months, Rick?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. So, it gives us time to work with the community, and you're right, we know the sentiment. We did the survey so we could understand where the community was sitting. I will say again, we need to have community involvement in this planning. It may just be a roof, but it's people out there want to have a word, they want to have a say, they want to understand the process, and putting a committee together of community members and parents, so we can explain what needs to be done. They can offer suggestions, whatever the case may be. But I think we need to involve the community, and that should give us time to do that. It also lets the community know that we do have needs that we need to address, and kind of starts to formulate the plan in front of everyone, so everyone kind of knows what's going on, what's coming up, and when to expect it. But I'm in support of the February 15th referendum date. Thank you.
Vicki?
Yeah, I'm in support of the February 15th, 2022 date also. I think this year has just been really difficult to even reach out to the community. We've had to change our process on how we do stuff, which has made it difficult for some who would like to join in. So yeah, I think this gives us enough time to get out to everybody, and yeah, hopefully we can form some committees, and let's hope that we can involve the community a little bit more, and we can get this COVID situation hopefully a little more under control, so we can reach out to the community and let them know where we're at.
All right, Maddie, any questions on this one? No. Yes, I'm absolutely in line with the rest of the board here on the February date. Obviously, that it sends a message to the public that we are coming for an undisclosed dollar amount at this point, but it gives us a year to prepare for it. I think this is a great opportunity to get it out so the public can be aware of it, and then they will also, want to be more informed and potentially involved as well. So it gives us. I'm excited to talk about the next steps here and what we can do to kind of sharpen the pencil and who we can work with to kind of refine what the ask will be. But yes, absolutely, this is kind of what we kind of envisioned over the last couple of months when we had some tough discussions as a board on what our next step should be. So board, great job coming together on this one. I think we're ready.
Hey, Mike, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
And if we can do this later too, when do we talk about how we start planning those next steps?
We will do that in discussion, but
Okay, we do have, okay.
and then on here, what I would say is we would be outlining for you what we think, and then get feedback tonight, and
Okay.
then each month it would become just like, unfortunately, we talk about COVID every month. Every month we will then have this as a standing item to give you an update on the projects.
Thank you.
All right, let's have somebody make a motion if we're ready.
I move to declare that Prescott's public schools will be placing a capital referendum question for voter approval on February 15th, 2022 election date ballot.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Nice work. Nice work. All right, let's move on to item I, information and discussion. First item is the spring school board election.
And I'll have Ms. Linderholm get her steps in again. Want to come on down?
Hello again, yes, just a quick update that we did have two individuals that still applied, Ms. Tanya Hola, Pat Black, thank you again, current incumbents to register for the spring election so that we will not need a primary here in February. So the next election date will be this April on the 6th, 2021.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Tanya and Pat.
Trying to get to level 3.
Yeah, you got a little ways to go to get to level 3, but you're on your way. All right, item 2 is facilities and grounds.
All right, I'm going to have Mike Koika step forward. On an annual basis, we have Mike come to you in January to kind of share with you kind of the projects that he is lining up to take care of over the summer. This has increased importance for a couple reasons. One is, one of the questions that you might have in the back of your mind or the community may have is, how does this play out with repair and replacements that you need with regards to a capital referendum? So Mike's going to kind of differentiate that for you. We also wanted to share that the summer, our fiscal year ends on June 30th and then begins July 1. So we have some reserves. Obviously, we budget for this year, and Mike knows kind of what he has. And then anything on this list that isn't covered in this year's budget, that's what Renee and I allocate dollars for July 1. So Mike, you want to walk us through?
Yep. Yeah, and every year annually, we to keep the buildings up, we evaluate them and look at what needs to be done to be preventive and keep everything looking good. Other than the stuff towards the referendum, which are much extremely larger projects where we need the additional dollars that we do not have in our budget. So this year, kind of looking forward at the high school level is preventive maintenance on our parking lot, and that's repair the large cracks, seal coat to prevent the smaller cracks from getting larger, and to keep our binding agents on the top surface of the asphalt so we don't get the rocks popping out. Do line painting for traffic, vehicle traffic and parking controls. One thing we do annually up here is to keep our gym floor up to playing levels, is recoating that every year. Continue to do that. Middle school, we have a hot water heater that is 4 years past its life expectancy. It's the main one for that building, so we're requesting to replace that this year. And as you see in there, we also list some other items. And those are kind of there that if we're going through and some of the stuff that we had budgeted for, if they come under budget, we can try and pick some of those up in the buildings too. So whether it be some cabinet heaters or ventilators, some of those stuff I would recommend if we get voter approval, we could probably take care of those at that time at the HVACs. Intermediate school.
Oh, Mike, just a clarification also. Could you speak to just the unit ventilators, how many that we have to replace, kind of their age currently, and now that we know that we're keeping students in that building, some of the challenges you have?
Yeah, we probably have 18 of them that are well past their life expectancy. On here, I'm listing the 3 oldest ones. You know, they're probably from the 70s. You know, they only have about a 20-year life expectancy. There's lead times to get them, so we keep watching them, and hopefully we can replace all of those that we need to in a couple of years. So, and they're in the classrooms. That's what does the heating and the air exchange in each classroom. So. Continuing on, intermediate school, we're looking at resurfacing the track and line painting, and that is something that's basically a 5-year preventive maintenance project you have to do to keep the track up to competition level and use. So, let's see.
Hey, Mike, really quick, just to recap, I think we talked about this, but the resurfacing of the track.
Yep.
If we don't do that, that track is not playable. Is that?
This will be your last year to play on it.
Okay.
We hope it weathered good enough that we just have to do minor repairs to have track meets there this year, and then repair it after the season. So,
okay.
It's a it's crumbled rubber with a latex base, and it deteriorates. It's out in the environment. It just deteriorates, and you have to recoat every 5 years. So, if you let it get too bad, then you have to go and re-scrape everything off and then work with the base and everything else, which can basically double the price. The west parking lot, if maybe looking at some stormwater curbing along that west side where the water is running out towards the bleacher area. Roof repairs, repair them, kind of control until we get time to replace them. The one thing that we have to do this year, and that is replace our generator at that location. It's either replace the generator. I'm also looking at something that might be cheaper, and that is replacing a lot of the light fixtures with battery backups, so we don't need the generator to run the lights in case of emergency situation, because you only need X amount of lights for emergency egress. So I'm looking into that some more, so maybe we can reduce that cost with having our emergency lighting system without replacing the generator and go with battery backups. Just stormwater, all the water off that building, off the roof, runs into a central drain system, and then it daylights out towards the parking lot. We get a lot of erosion around that. We had the city help us lift that manhole cover up, and because of the amount of water that comes off that, we need to put a hard surface around that to divert the water back onto the parking lot. Our mezzanines or decks in that area, we had them coated a few years ago, but the product didn't have enough anti-slip product in it, and it's very, very slippery, even without much moisture on it, rain. So we need to completely grind that off and then recoat that. That's kind of a must-do, because if we had to evacuate the building in an emergency situation, it'd be a lot of slipping and sliding to get out the doors. So those projects that in the yellow there are we've budgeted for. Some will be out of this year's budget, some will be out of next year's budget. So being the budget year ends in the middle of the summer. Looking forward, I just put on here the playground over at Malone Elementary. It's past its life expectancy. As you can see, playgrounds are very expensive to replace. There's some grants and stuff that can be out there. I just wanted to put that on there. We'll have to look how we're going to take care of that in the future.
Put some photos up for that. I know that Sarah Dusick and Michael Kosmowski are working on a couple projects, both to kind of look at the structure, to look at some grants like we did for the intermediate school, and then also for a fundraising. On the far left, you can see where the yellow tape is. The slide cracked in multiple areas. We did have to remove it, so it's no longer used. You can see we've retrofitted some of the steps. One of the things that Mike shared with me at our weekly meeting is he's now going to be adding playground structures to the 10-year plans, because they are outdoors. They tend to have a 20-year lifespan, but the platforms have rusted such that we will be looking at extracting and then what a replacement would look like.
Yeah, and the structure we're looking at over there was installed in 1994. So you get a 20-year life expectancy, 20 to 25-year life expectancy on that playground equipment, and we are at year 27 on it. So it's something we need to look at. We've done repairs over the years, but it's to the point where you can't get parts for that one. It's obsolete. It's something that's not in their design at the playground equipment place that makes that particular brand. So one other thing, keeping our grounds up. One thing I'm hoping that some of these projects we can get done for less than what I have budgeted here. One thing I'd like to purchase is a top dresser piece of equipment for rebuilding our crown on our football field. It's starting to flatten out. We need to start maintaining that. So if we could purchase that piece of equipment this year or next year would be great to start slowly building that crown back up and keeping our athletic football field. So,
Pat, you have any questions on anything?
No, I think we've reviewed a lot of these before. Mike, on the generator thing, are we replacing it because it's just tired and old and worn out, or?
It's tired, it's old, it's obsolete, you can't get parts for it. So we've researched it, what we can get. We're talking about moving it outside because you can't put it back where it's at, but also talking with some electrical companies is maybe that not replace the generator, but put battery backup fixtures like we have in some of the other buildings in the structure, being we already have the electric circuitry that the generator would run those lights. We think we can maybe do something cheaper that way instead of spending $75,000 to $80,000 on a backup generator, is going with the light fixtures.
Just, and on that building, I'm trying to remember, is there any like food storage or anything going on in that building that you would have a missing emergency service if the generator went?
We currently, right now, at all our schools, we only have two schools with generators, and none of them operate the refrigerators or freezers.
Okay. So they're not on emergency circuits anyway, usually?
No. Just the only thing that the generator, like at the high school here, we have a backup generator here. All that run is our emergency lighting and a couple house pumps for the heating system.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, no, I have no other questions.
Okay.
Tanya?
Mike, is it your team that basically does this stuff over the summer, your custodial team that does most of this work?
For the cleaning, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and they will do kind of the painting and all that resurfacing and all that stuff as well? Okay.
Yep.
And then in the past, I don't think we did last year, but we hired some kids to kind of help and stuff in the summertime. Are you looking at being able to do that this year to help you guys, or do you have enough staff to do this?
No, last year we didn't have any student workers because of the COVID
Right.
issue. This year we're going to look at hiring student workers again. They're very helpful, they're very good workers, especially when we take every fixture out of a room and wipe it down and clean it, cleaning all the light fixtures, so, yeah.
And I just wanted to make a comment, when we were in closed session earlier, Rick, you had made a comment that Mike is constantly reminding us that his staff are custodial staff, not janitorial staff, and because of the amount of work that they do and their ability to tackle things like this, which is beyond like a scope and sequence of what we would traditionally think of a janitor. And so I'm really, really appreciative of that change in language and making sure that we recognize that your team is awesome. They do a lot more for us than what we see day to day. And these are the kind of projects that we just can't keep operating without them. And we know you guys are struggling right now for staff and working really hard, and we really appreciate it. So thank you. No questions.
Maddie, any questions on this?
No questions.
Vicki?
I don't have any questions.
Steve?
Well, I can't really follow what Tanya said. I still think we should do the track in a red or burgundy color, but I guess I'll digress from that. But no, Mike, thanks for all the information, all the work you guys do, and greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, the only question I have is, so we have the highlighted projects are about $230K, a little over, and we're going to spread that out over both budget cycles.
Correct.
And all this is getting done this summer, we're saying, or we're going to try to, right?
We're going to try and do all of that this summer.
So what does that do for your budget for 2021-22 school year then? If you're going to have to probably take, I don't know how much, I'm guessing it's over 100, but close to it for the 2021-22 school year.
2021, we have this in our budget. Half of this.
Okay.
So, and then the other part we'll take from, we'll use from next year's budget. The money that we have in our remodel repair account, that's where this money comes from. And then we have other money set aside for emergency repairs.
Okay.
And, and preventive repairs that we do through the school year. So there's two different accounts. This is just, the one we're looking at is just for the large summer repair projects that we have money set aside for.
So will we have enough, do you think, like, I'm thinking 2022 summer now, if we have other projects that are on your list, we're gonna be able to tackle those?
We'll be able to, yeah.
Okay.
It's something kind of the way we've done it every year.
Yeah.
To kind of keep things going, we always, finish up what we have the first part of the summer, and then we use part of it to finish up the other part of it going into next year's budget, so.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, nice work, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, well done. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so we're on item 3 now to discuss graduation policy and requirements.
Yes, and I have our high school esteemed principal coming up. As you know, beginning of the year, we shifted from semesters to trimesters, and now we need to update how credits are allocated to make sure that we have appropriate graduation requirements. So, Mr. Figge.
Thank you. Good evening again. So as Dr. Spikuza just stated, for this year, at the beginning of the year, we switched our schedule structure from a semester-based schedule to a trimester-based schedule, which gave our students more opportunities throughout the year. In fact, students can now take one additional course throughout the year. So what you're going to see in our presentation tonight is a reflection of what graduation requirements would be with this new system. Our current system, the credits in the classes reflect what we had under the semester schedule. So you're going to see the guiding change up there. I think one of the most important things I would point to would be the results. And that is, our purpose is that all students have an equitable chance to graduate, that our graduation requirements reflect the change in credit earning potential in the trimester schedule, and that our graduation requirements engage all students in a continuous pattern of learning throughout all 4 years of high school. Dr. Spikuza, I'd actually have you move ahead to the proposal. So this would be our proposal, that our current graduation requirements for credits is 48 credits. And again, that was reflective of our semester schedule. Now that students are able to earn one additional credit by taking one additional class per year, throughout the course of their high school career, they would earn 4 additional credits. So we're proposing that we would increase our high school graduation requirement 4 additional credits to 52 credits to graduate. Maddie will be very, very pleased to know that this would not impact the class of 2021, because the class of 2021 does not have that kind of credit earning potential. Maddie's class can only take 1 additional class because it's only her senior year that we've switched to the trimester schedule.
But Maddie, if you would like to stay, you are welcome.
And Maddie, you probably have plenty of credits to graduate with 52 credits anyway. So bullet point number 3 really talks about that this would be a phased-in process, that between the classes of 2022 to 2024, we would gradually add in the credits necessary each year for a student to graduate. There is no specific core course or requirement that this would dictate students take, so we wouldn't be adding in additional science credits or math credits that would be required at this time. These would simply be elective choice credits that students would take throughout the course of their high school career. I think probably the easiest way to see this is with the next slide, which would show the impact of each class. So if you look at our, I'll call it our old baseline, which was our class of 2020, you can see that year by year they were able to earn 14 credits. And so they could earn a total of 56 credits throughout the course of their high school career, and they needed 48 to graduate. And this means that they needed to pass 86% of their classes to graduate. Now, if you look at the class of 2021, they took 14 credits because they were under the semester-based schedule for their 9th, 10th, and 11th grade years. But this year, their 12th grade year, they're under the trimester schedule. They can earn 15 credits. So they are able to earn 57 total credits, but they still, in our proposal, would only need 48 to graduate. From the class of 2022 to 2024, you can see that their credit earning potential increases each year. It goes all the way up to 60. And so our proposal under that second to last column, is the required credits to graduate. Moving from 48 to 50 for the class of 2022. And that is still, you can see they still would only have to pass 86% of their classes then to graduate, to 51 for our class of 2023. And then finally, for the classes of 2024 and beyond, to 52 credits to graduate. And you can see that they still really, it's a pretty steady, there's no growth. They still have to pass 87% of their classes to graduate high school. So these are the current state requirements and district requirements that we have. 4 years of English, 3 of math, science, and social studies, 3 quote-unquote classes of physical education over the course of 3 years, 1 health class, and then 18 trimester classes. What would be increasing then would be those elective classes, and again, those could be in CTE, music, art, or they could be embedded into English, math, science, and social studies. Right now, we're proposing that that is dictated by the student and their family. But those 18 trimester classes would then increase by the class of 2024 to 22 elective classes. So, just kind of to recap here, under the semester schedule, we had 48 required credits. We're proposing an increase gradually by the year 2024 to 52 credits to graduate. It would not impact our current seniors. We don't want to move the goalposts on them, especially 3 months away from graduation. We would have a gradual increase starting with the class of 2022 and then moving to the class of 2024 and beyond. And those gradual increases are shown on slide 4. And then this would be open for students to choose where they would add those additional classes in core electives if they want, or it could be CTE, music, art, fine arts, etc. Any questions?
Steve, you have any questions?
Not until Tanya goes.
I was gonna go with her first, but Vicki?
No, I don't have any questions. Seems pretty clear.
Okay, Pat?
No questions?
Tanya?
I mainly don't have a question, and I have one. Now I feel weird about asking it, Steve. But actually, it makes total sense. They have more opportunities to earn credits. I like that they get to choose electives so they can kind of do that career path kind of interest area, which is awesome. My only question, which is referenced on here, is it looks like we would have to change policy because our graduation requirement is listed in policy for credit. So my question is more about procedure here. It looks like it'd have to come back on our agenda next time to formally approve. Okay, yeah, I'm all on board.
All right. Looks good. Thank you, Mr. Figge.
Okay, thank you guys.
And don't go too far, because the next one's yours.
All right, number 4 is academy policy for CVTC development work.
So I'm just switching the slide. As you recall, in December, we had a wonderful opportunity to participate in an academy. It was a little hard for us, based on the time, to do math in front of the board. So we have put together a chart, a matrix, for you, and I'm going to have Josh just kind of walk through. You did agree to 2 students to participate in that, and we just wanted to kind of show you in a chart way how many students across the years, what our total liability is, if we altered it, but then Mr. Figge has 3 questions to kind of pursue with you.
Yeah, I think we have, so there are kind of 3 chunks to this process, as Dr. Spikuza laid out. The first one is just seeing what that investment would be. I know there were questions around the budgetary side and the financial side of this. I think one of the difficult things is there are literally dozens of different academies that as a school district we can participate in. The business academy that we presented to you in December is one of those, and each academy varies in length. So some of them are 4 years like this. They obviously have a higher cost. Some of them are shorter. They're a 1 year or 2 year, and they have a more condensed cost. So for the business academy that we presented, what you can see up top with the first chart is the 2 students. If we had a 2-student ongoing cohort year by year, by the time that we got to 4 years, or year 4, say we're 4 years from now, and we had 4 total cohorts of 2 students each participating in this program, we would be looking at an annual cost to the district of about $13,600. If we can compare that then to if we base this on a 5-student cohort, it would cost us about $8,500 a year in year 1, and then if we continue to add cohorts that were participating, by year 4 we would have 20 students who are participating at an ongoing rate at different points in the program, and it would cost the district about $34,000 to participate in that program as an ongoing 5-student cohort model. So again, that is specific to the Business Academy, which is one of the larger academies they have, just because it's a 4-year academy. So I think for us, the next 2 chunks, because we had talked about chunking this up, would be I'm looking for a little guidance from the board in terms of the academy model, and then I have some questions, and then we had also discussed one of the other pieces in the December board meeting, which was around policy. So what I'm looking for from the board are number 1, is there information that you would like from us regarding the academy models to come back to you with at a later board meetings, that we could provide some more clarity or just give you a better understanding of what the potential is for the academy model at the high school. To what extent would you like us to pursue any further academies at Prescott High School and in Prescott School District? And then our comfort level, I guess, to that extent, knowing that there are 1-year academies, 2-year academies, 4-year academies, and they range in focus from a healthcare academy, CNA, electrical work, welding, business, that really to most of the career clusters. Is there a specific area that we should be exploring that you believe as a board, or is there a specific timeline for these academies, a 1-year or a 2-year versus a 4-year, that you guys would like to see brought forward as well? So those would be the questions I have for the board, and looking just for a little guidance from you. I did also reach out to some other schools in terms of policy. I know one of the things that we brought up as a school board when we were discussing was, do we have a policy regarding the academy model? At the time, I had told you that we didn't. We have an early college credit program policy, and we have a Start College Now policy. Both of those are dictated by Wisconsin state statute. A student can't technically start either program until they're a junior or senior. They have to successfully complete 10th grade. So even by that first specification, our academies would not fall under those models. Eau Claire School District is probably the largest in our region user of academies. They partner with CVTC, which is our technical school partner. When I reached out to them, they do not have a specific academy policy that they use. So I know that doesn't make it any easier for us, but I think the other question I would have is, would you like to pursue and what types of things would you like to see in terms of information that would help inform a potential policy if that's the direction we would want to go?
All right.
Hey, Mike, Josh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you repeat, I think, the last 3 bullet points you just gave? Could you repeat the middle one about, I think it was the initial, about the credits and how it compares to existing policy that we have?
Sure. You're referring to the policy
Yes.
point of that?
Yep.
So in policy right now, we have 2 Wisconsin programs that are recognized across the state. They're in statute. Early college credit, which is for 4-year universities, and Start College Now, which is for technical colleges, and students gaining credit from them while in high school. The number 1 stipulation for those programs is set out in Wisconsin state statute, and it dictates that a student must have successfully completed 10th grade in order to even be eligible to go to the school board to pursue those opportunities. Using our business academy as an example, we have 8th grade students who are looking to participate in that. So by default, it wouldn't fall under either one of those policies. The way we have them laid out, it also doesn't fall under Wisconsin state statute.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to open it up for questions from the board here. I know this is kind of a lot to take in and to kind of think on the spot and ask questions about what we want. It's, I personally, I think I'm gonna probably wanna hold off, but I'm gonna open it up right now, and ask my fellow board members if they have any questions or if they have any thoughts off the top of their head. But I think this one, you know, obviously there's gonna be a lot more of thought that goes into this after the meeting too. So, Tanya, do you wanna start?
Sure. Well, I'm just going to start super basic so I'm understanding, but the graph, and Rick, I think it was I think you had the slide maybe up there earlier, I'm not sure. But anyways, we talked about the cost per cohort, and we agreed to the 2, and you have the 5 on there as well. So those are costs for 2 students per cohort, so about $3,400 per year for those 2 students. So if we were to layer that and say we have 2 students every year, we could potentially have 4 times that amount, right, per year, which would be, starts to get quite a bit of money. And so I just want to say, like, that's what we're really considering.
That's right there. So
Yeah, so then it goes down. So this is for 2, but if we have a cohort every year going through this, we could have 4 cohorts.
That's the 13.6 that you see up
Yeah.
there, the total cost per
okay,
cohort.
gotcha.
Yep.
So it's 13.6.
Yeah, that lower right,
Yep.
year 4 moving forward at 13.6.
I
If you
should
have
have,
a new cohort every year going through, gotcha.
correct, if we have 4 simultaneous cohorts, but.
Perfect. So that was my first question. And then you had asked about kind of what areas and what we should be exploring, because there's a whole bunch of different things out there. And I guess I know that I think there's 6 different career paths or clusters out there. And I'd be really curious to kind of dive into what we already kind of offer career pathwise within our buildings, and maybe that's something for a curriculum and learning person or something too, but kind of where are those pathways to careers right now, and where do we have some gaps? So I personally really liked this business one, because I know we have I think some pretty strong tech ed paths. We're working on some STEM paths, but having more of that business is kind of an area that to me it seemed like we don't have quite as much in. So when I'm thinking about in the future, I would really like to just keep making sure that we have pathways within all those 6 areas in some form or another. So for me, that would just be something to look into. And then I agree with policy. I mean, I feel like this is a little uncharted territory, which I think is exciting. I don't want you guys to have to keep bringing it back to us every time we're approving kids and stuff like that. I'd rather have a policy in place that kind of guides you guys and lets you decide what to do and how many kids and how that looks. So I would be really into exploring a policy that would kind of meet those needs, and we might be creating it or whatever, but it would be, I think, worthwhile to kind of have something in place so at least we can guide you and it's not kind of this emotional decision every time, and it's kind of work, and we can start to budget for it every year and we know what we can do. So that's kind of where I'm at with that stuff, and I think it's super exciting, and I look forward to seeing how this first cohort works, and yeah, it's exciting. That's
Thank
all I
you.
have.
Maddie, do you have any comments on this one? All right, Pat?
Tanya, I apologize if my ears are terrible, so you may have already said some of this, but I think, Josh, the questions that I would have that would help me, I think, try to make sense of this all is I would love to see, you mentioned you could come back with some options, right? What are some of the academies that are, that are out there? What are the 2, the 4, and what type of programs? I think Tanya already asked that. I would be curious, have we seen, has there been any, parent feedback? I mean, what's the current desire for a program like this from our, quote unquote customer base? Is this a thing, that's widely even known about, and what's the desire there? And then I'm wondering if we could do a cost analysis based on, this is great. Can we do analysis based on what our current college credit program is, maybe per credit or per student, or however that works out? I'd like to see that back and forth. I think that would help guide some policy anyway.
Thank you.
I'm good.
No, and what I'm displaying right now are kind of the different courses. The early college program, the Start College Now. We also have a ITV program. There's a flat administrative, but then our students are able to take courses. And then we have an Edmentum program that we'll be sharing a little bit more with you. that across the last 4 years has expanded. It was kind of used for credit recovery, but now it's used for core classes, it's used for electives, it's used for ACT prep. And to your point, we've started to work with Renee to pull what we've spent over the last 3 years, get an average, to be able to come back and share that with you, and then compare it to the CVTC proposal that we had. Great. So that's, you'll see that coming forward. So I'm glad, one, that we're kind of heading in the right direction. We just haven't been able to proof all the data yet, but that'll be available to you.
All right, Vicki, any questions for Mr. Figge?
No, I don't think I have any questions. I'm on board with a policy, coming up with something so you don't have to continue to come back to us. And yeah, I had spoken to Rick about finding out numbers on, you know, what we're spending on the, you know, the Start College Now and the early college credits, what that financials look like. So yeah, to see if we can make sure we can fit this in. So yeah, it's just a lot of, I think, numbers for now and trying to come up with some sort of policy.
Steve?
So policy is important, right? I think we're all on the same page there to some level. The dollars concern me just from the standpoint, you know, I agree with the programming, but, you know, if we're kind of paying Peter to pay, wait, how's that go? Well, you know, if we're moving money here or we need it somewhere else within the district, you know, are we taking money for a few where the majority needs it? Those are things I would be concerned of, just depending on how our budget plays out in the next biennium. So just, I guess, please stay aware of that. I just want to make sure our overall programming is supported for everyone versus this program for a few students. But again, I support it. I think it's a good plan. We just need to make sure the money's coming from the right place and going to the right place.
And just to add on with Steve, what you were saying is, like, for me, sustainability is really important too. So I hate offering a program for 1 or 2 years. We all get excited about it and then it has to go away. So even if it's starting small and we can add to it, just what's sustainable and to get our kids excited and in the door.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with it. Is can we sustain the programs? Obviously that's in your wheelhouse, Rick. And then just to echo Tanya's, that, you know, what gaps do these academies fill? Yeah, if there's programming gaps, and as well as demand. I think I'd be interested to know, like, what are the kids and the parents interested in, and where is the demand, so we can kind of cater around that too.
One thing, and Josh, you brought this up last time, which we had so many applicants apply for it, and it hasn't even been out there before, you know. So to me, and I had people actually in the community reach out, and that doesn't happen very often. And so it felt like there was some demand here, and I was impressed with even how many. It didn't sound like an easy application process, and yet we still had quite a few. I feel like, was it in the 20s or something apply?
I think it was 34.
I mean, that's pretty impressive, really, for a program that hasn't even started.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Figge.
Thank you.
And thank you for your feedback. I think that'll help us identify the next steps.
All right. Item 5 is administration and academic programming adjustment to place grade 3 back to Malone Elementary.
So I have another dynamic duo coming, Sarah Dusick and Michael Kozmowski. They're going to share with you kind of a presentation, and it's specific to kind of looking at how we divide up and sort grades. It is not related in any way to our capital referendum. This is something that is basically trying to look at the balance of the right fit, and they'll walk through some of the categories and the balance of why they do believe in this proposal. So Sarah and Michael.
Good evening. So since I've been part of the administration team here, I'm on my 3rd year here, we've been working to really align our programs and resources with the district vision of delivering meaningful and creative opportunities that establish continuous learning, positive outcomes, and an inclusive community. Michael and I have worked hard this year to really align our programming K-5, but we as a K-5 admin team agree that our current K-2, 3, 5 structure kind of restricts us in being able to meet the district mission and vision, and we think that a K-3 structure would help us become more aligned in what the district has for their mission and vision.
Yes, we start with what we do with most things in the district now is a guiding change for what's our current reality, what's our desired outcomes, and then what are the things that are non-negotiable for us. So current reality-wise, the elementary campus does have enough space to absorb another grade level, including modest student growth. And I know that's always something as a district when we see new developments going up, we worry about when that growth comes, that we're not putting ourselves into a corner. So that's part of the thing that we looked at. Again, as Dr. Spikuza said, it's not contingent on a capital referendum. And we believe that building transition between grades 2 and 3 is hindering our ability to deliver that coherent academic programming that prepares students for future success. So what we're looking at, desired outcomes, what we'd like is when we looked at the grade configurations, is a grade configuration that encourages the best social, emotional, and behavioral development of our students, allows again for that curriculum alignment really around literacy and numeracy, and Ms. Dusick will venture into that a little bit further. That coherence, again, realizing the student's full potential, and decreasing the number of transitions, especially during that early learning development. So that was our desired outcome. And then our unacceptable means. What are the things that this would be our sort of our go and no go of would we do this or not. Again, putting too much the system itself under undue stress, students and staff in unsafe situations as we do have an ongoing global pandemic, and to remain status quo and optimize our facilities and for us to trying to reach our student outcomes. So that was our guide to our thought process here.
And when we talk about the positives to creating a K-3 grade configuration, one of the first things that we look at is what we know and understand and also experience with our third grade students. We know that developmentally they more align with the K-2 students when it comes to social, emotional, and behavioral. A lot of the times, like Mr. Kosmalski will say, when a third grader is in his office with a problem, it aligned more with when he was standing in for me and the problems he would see with K-2 students, and it doesn't align a lot with our 4-5 students. And then when we talk about the curriculum alignment, when we think about our reading, a lot of the resources, primarily our Foundations Phonics resource, they align K-3, mainly because K-3 is really that foundational building years. They are building the foundations to become good readers in the 4th and 5th grade years. And then same with math. They are building those foundations in the procedural skills and number sense in order to shift more into the conceptual learning that happens at the higher grades. And we just believe that with the developmental and the curriculum alignment, that would achieve higher student academic outcomes. It would also help us to align our K-3 staff with PD and getting them on the same page and understanding the growth and development that bringing that third grade in would do across that. And then we also just think too that the growth and development of the students, that it's more developmentally appropriate for them to transfer to a different building at 4th grade than at 3rd grade. They're just more mature and ready to accept that change, and it won't push them back further academically.
Right, and all the things that Ms. Dusick talked about, all those positives that come with it, especially that transition that I am seeing heavily now is that transition of learning to read and then reading to learn. And that really happens sort of that end of the 3rd grade year into 4th grade, and again, that maturity. But the context of when to change, when would we do this? Again, we do have an ongoing backdrop of a COVID-19 pandemic. Our goal is to keep our buildings open as we have 5 days a week for all of our students to be there in a safe, welcoming, and nurturing environment. So that plays into part of our proposal and decision. Obviously, with that, we have increased lunch and recess supervision. The classrooms, some of them have been repurposed for other purposes during COVID. And then we have some constraints due to our equipment and playground size and things of that nature, where we used to be able to overlap some recesses and now we can't. Another big thing is the communication window. If we were to go forward with this proposal for next fall, we have families that are planning on and making those plans that they are transitioning to another building, and really getting them educated and the community on why are we doing this and why we believe it is or isn't the right time. The other thing is just balancing that load balance. Again, food service, custodial, transportation, all of that would need to be looked at and retooled to support a K-3 building. And then teacher transitions. All of our specials teachers transition between the buildings. Some of our support staff and services, counseling, school psych, OT, speech, looking at those schedules and how do we balance their time in the buildings. Because you can't always predict when student behavior and needs are going to come up. So those are some of the contexts or challenges that we face in how would we deliver on this.
And so with that information, as an K-5 administrative team, our recommendation to the board would be that we would like to move forward with proposing a K-3 configuration at the Malone Elementary site, but for the fall of 2022. And that would be barring that we aren't under a global pandemic or anything like that at that time either. But that we just really believe that fall of 2022 gives us time to educate and prepare families for that transition, the why of that transition, why the things that we've discussed, why we really truly believe those at our heart. And then it just gives our staff and Michael and I time to kind of prepare and get plans further in place than they already are. So, do you guys have any questions?
Let's start up top here with Steve. Steve, you have any questions or comments?
I have a couple. The principals that just spoke, I think you guys need to know that we recognize the great job you guys are doing in these buildings. And I sincerely take to heart this recommendation coming from both of you. But I still have to ask the question relative to teacher input and parent input. I just want to make sure that's vetted. I know you have the parent groups, obviously. The PLCs, I'm sure, were involved, but just anything else you can tell us about that interaction would be helpful for me.
Yeah, this really has been looked at and analyzed really over the last 2 years. I'll see even when Dania Stefan was here. The third grade PLC team, we have discussed this several times over the course of this year. Knowing that a decision like this was going to be independent of any sort of referendum, and why we believed it was the best, and why they believed with Danita that it was the best. And really, when I came on board, of how do we still believe that even in today's world? So yeah, it has been something that's been discussed at the PLCs. All the teachers at the grade level are aware and have had those conversations over the last year and a half, really. Part of it was with the families and with the Malone Parent Committee, when is that right time to start discussing it? And we feel like now is really that right time if we're going to start educating them for a 2022 move.
Okay, thank you very much.
Vicki, any questions or comments?
I don't know that I necessarily have any questions. Steve kind of asked the one I was thinking about, make sure that the teachers were involved in had input into this. But no, I think with the recommendations from both of you and knowing how your students are and what they need, I fully support this.
Okay, Tanya?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your recommendation. In my past life, I was an elementary teacher, so I taught 2nd and 3rd grade, and then I moved to 4th grade, and so I totally get the difference between those 3rd graders, and I think I use pretty much a similar curriculum with 2nd and 3rd grade, and it does start to shift. So I totally get it. I think it also helps us have other conversations as a district, which is when we really began studying our buildings and configurations, it was, I don't know, a year or two ago, and it had a lot to do with overcrowding at the middle school too. And so this also opens up kind of that other area, and whether or not it's a long-term solution for us, it gives us some options to look at what we're gonna do with that, with the middle school and the crowding there too. So it totally makes sense to me. I'm all on board for fall of 2022 if you guys think that's what's best for your staff and your kids. And I agree. Our kids have had so many changes, and families have had so many changes, and they went into this school year thinking, I'm a 2nd grader, I'm going to the intermediate school next year, and I don't know if we have any real reason to put a change in there when they've already had so many. So, yeah, I support all of what you guys said. I don't really have any questions.
Maddie, any questions or comments here?
No questions.
Pat?
Completely makes sense, and I would support your guys' expertise in this, certainly. I just, and I guess I want to clarify the intent of this discussion. Is this to, is this going to be an action item, a business item that needs to come up in the next month or two? And the reason I ask that is I want to be careful. We've established tonight that there's going to be a form of, there'll be a referendum in February, and that's going to involve various committees, parent committees, other directional type, information gathering in committees. And I guess I want to be careful committing to something without having that type of input. I guess would be my comment right now.
Yeah. And internally, I know that we've had this discussion, and we went through the slides on Tuesday, and I think the main intent is to get a direction, right? We know that there's been a facility study previously before the high school was built. When I first came on, there was discussion of keeping it as a K-3. Circumstances and some administrative and teacher concerns were the reason that we ended up going K-2 and 3-5. I think both, we had some technical difficulty, but the 4 bullets that are up there, what we believe and research plays out is that the fewer transitions for any student. K-8 buildings are the best design out there. You have very little regression and recoupment required. We think right now that K-3, with the investment we have in the Foundation's phonics program, is critical to make sure proximity. When you have all those teachers in the same building, it's not a slight to either of the principals, but it's easier when you're all together informally to partner, and it would be in our best interest and for our students to get that strong foundation without transitions at that time where you're trying to learn to read. And then I think also for that math base. Our recommendation would be, if that's the signal and you can see that from an educational and from a student perspective it's a healthy and wise decision, then we would decide whether or not you just want to, with consensus, or do you want us to come back with a formal, do you want to get into the grade configuration, debating whether or not the developmental and academic piece, or do you want to leave that to administration to just, based on the consensus, we're really looking at the most appropriate timing.
Yeah.
And we're happy to follow either procedure, but we just kind of wanted to see if you wanted to signal that way or formally adopt it.
And again, I can sit here all day and say, yes, I agree with it personally. I agree with the concept. It sounds like the majority of the board does too. Rick, I want to make sure we're not handcuffing ourselves going into the next 10 to 12 months on decisions that are potentially going to get made because we made something today without that, without that other piece of it. So if we're looking for direction, again, my opinion is that, this is wonderful, and I would fully support it.
Yeah, and maybe I'll jump in here too on that same comment. I think looking forward, this is something the board should be accountable for, and I think we should probably put it on as an agenda item in one of the up and coming months. If it's next month, great. We'll have a month to think about it and vote on it, because it's a big decision. I mean, this is definitely a big decision. It doesn't mean we can't change and have a different decision made in 10, 12 months from now, Pat, if things seem like they're not, it wasn't, the direction maybe changed for some reason. But I'd say let's throw it on the agenda and vote on it next month, or if it's next month. I think we kind of talked about next month, Rick. And just that way it provides a little bit of cover for the administration too, and the board's accountable.
I guess I'm a little different there. I don't necessarily think we need to vote on it. I think it's kind of, but I'm okay voting on it. But I don't know if it makes sense to put it on our agenda next month. If we just ask them to make sure they're talking to parent groups, they're talking to kids, they're talking to the community, that I'm not expecting that done by next month, and I don't know why we would make a decision and then have them talk to the community, and then the community says, nope, it doesn't make sense to me. So I would say take the time, invest in the community, talk to them, talk to your stakeholders, bring it back to us when you have more information about, for sure this is the direction we want to go. We've kind of seen where our growth is in our community. This 2022 gives us lots of time to talk about it and talk to our community. It doesn't make sense for us to vote on it, say, yes, this is going to happen, and then you go talk to your people. So I would say do your job, talk to people, let us know in a couple months would be my opinion, or 6 months from now. Really, we have lots of time. So that's my thought.
I guess I slightly disagree. I think we've done a lot of communication. I know that this has been going on inside the buildings, and the staffing has been discussing this for a couple of years now. From a community perspective, if we need more input from the community, I don't know where we go from there, because we've done surveys. We could do, we could spend some time and invest in some more discussions to help inform the community.
I agree with you that too, Mike. I don't know if we need community approval necessarily on this. It's a decision with building and all that stuff. But I did hear 2 board members specifically ask for that. So, so, and I think that's okay too.
What I don't want to have happen is for us not to be able to make a decision and give the administration direction so they can start planning. I think there's a lot of, to your point, you want to postpone this to the fall of 22 just so you can kind of start planning and communicating out to families that this is happening, that we're moving in this direction. And if we need to get more input from the community, then that's fine, but that's gonna delay a formal decision to move forward in this direction. To me, it's not if, it's when this happens, because this is part of the long-term strategic direction that we've been working on with SDS, with the buildings and the configuration. It really, to me, it kind of, if we move forward and we make that building a K-3 now, that's just one less chip that we have to deal with, and now it really puts the spotlight on the intermediate school, because that's going to leave 2 grades in that building. With that building could take way more than 2 grades. so that kind of shifts the discussion to what are we going to do with the intermediate school, and it kind of removes that one low-hanging fruit off the table with moving 3rd grade over to Malone Intermediate. So I'm all for what you guys are saying and getting community input. I just don't want to delay a decision that, in my opinion, seems like it's inevitable. And if we can move it forward, it's off the table, and now we're talking about what we really need to be talking about, which is what are we going to do at the intermediate school.
Well, I guess, Mike, I don't know if we can answer this question, okay? And I guess I'm not looking to go to a survey to the community, wondering if they all think that we should move the 3rd grade to the school. It's not what I'm talking about. If we move the 3rd grade there, what kind of costs are we dealing with? Do we have the infrastructure? Is the cafeteria, are the restrooms, are the playground facilities, are they appropriate to add another grade today, right now, or in 2022, without investing capital dollars? And if we can't answer yes to that, then I think we need to go through the process we're about to go through to make sure that we're being set up for success. Same thing goes with our other schools. In any type of grade shift anywhere is going to affect 1 to 2 other schools. We just need to make sure that we're making wise cost decisions there, and not being able to undo something.
Yeah, so let me interject. I think I want to hit that first topic, and I think that's one of the reasons that, to frame it up, I would say that there's educational consensus that it's the best configuration that we can provide based on the facilities and then also for the long-term academic and social emotional. To your point, we currently have 4 classrooms that are not functionally used over at Malone.
Right.
And so we do believe that we can move 4 classrooms, 4 teachers and 4 classrooms into that. And as Michael shared, even a little bit of room to grow, because although we used to be about 100 kiddos per grade level, we're about 85 and starting to grow back. So we can expand. Will it have any capital need? Not directly. When we were first doing the survey, we were looking at secure entrances. We were looking at some efficiencies in the flow of the school, but it had hosted K-5 before. So moving a 3rd grade in, functionally it can happen with very little sans one thing, and that's the playground. So remember, we just talked about the playground needs to be done. So this is going to be our pause button, because part of it is if we have K3, we need to think about at least the footprint. And so for Mike, we've already said, depending on kind of where you are, and if it's going to be fall 2022, then we're going to start to take a little more time, include families and the teachers to say, what type of footprint do we need? And then obviously special education for the ADA. So that is the only thing that would change but that's an essential thing that has to occur.
But I'm also under the impression, I guess it's not an impression, it's confirmed, right, that there's currently, in a K2 scenario, there's currently challenge with FIAD, with lunch, with rolling that through. We're going to add another grade without adding any capital improvement dollars to that whole functionality of that core, and I guess that would be a concern of mine as well, not to mention playground equipment.
So, and all I would say is that all the capital things, whether or not it's K2 or K3, the roof and the HVAC on the portion that we weren't able to do in 2018, still will occur. So we really aren't looking at any added cost to achieve this K3 configuration.
And I have run through some mock schedules of what it would look like to have a K3 in the building, how it would work with FIAD, how it would work with lunches. Michael and even Kyle Igo, we've had conversations about staffing, about having to share across FIADs and stuff like that too. So we're pretty confident, based just on the mock-ups that we've put up, that it is doable. But without many more changes. We'd have to get creative a little bit, but just we'd have one FIAD in the afternoon after cleanup was done, instead of all of them in the morning before lunch was done. So.
And Sarah, one of the things I just wanted to say, with the backdrop of COVID, I mentioned is that we have 4 rooms, and I think if COVID wasn't here as a backdrop, we probably could be turnkey. It could happen, and we would do the move internally. However, those 4 rooms aren't truly vacant based on how we have to organize our rooms with 6 feet. Can you share how you use 2 rooms for lunches, intervention, and an isolation?
Right. So in a non-COVID year, we have like 4 to 5 classrooms that are, I call them luxury spaces. We have rooms for aides to meet with students. We have 2 activity rooms that sit empty for 90% of the day. They're used for indoor recess, that kind of stuff. In a COVID time, we're using 2 classrooms that are kind of our luxury space as lunchrooms. And so we have 2 classrooms and then 2 classrooms in the gym for lunch. And then we've also had the opportunity, because of the amount of space that we have right now, Each grade level has a full-size classroom as a breakout room where our aides, where our interventionists can pull grade levels, so that there's a kindergarten room where only kindergartners go throughout the day. There's a first grade room where only first graders go throughout the day, and a second grade room where second graders go throughout the day. Those rooms, when third grade would come, would be absorbed into third grade classrooms, so we wouldn't have that luxury, which is why part of the proposal is for fall of 2022, because we need those spaces if we're under COVID protocol for next fall. But we have full classroom sizes for sped rooms, and we just have a lot of extra space that could be put towards multiple classrooms for third grade. And then the schedules have been built up to just mock schedules that just, do they work, don't they work? Can the timing work around? So.
But I think that's one of the reasons that the recommendations shifted, that we know COVID's not going to be done with us in fall, and so I think in the best case scenario, having that additional time to engage our families. And I think you guys clarified, I don't think it's necessarily asking the community to vote on that. I think it's maybe informing and educating our current K2 and K3 families about the educational model, some of the benefits, and making sure that they understand and that they're comfortable with that, so that when we make the shift, the timing's right. So that's what I hear you guys saying. I think therefore, maybe initially we were thinking of coming back in February. I think we can take a pause, gather that information, come back and either in a discussion or a business item. But I personally think it would help from my psych days, when you have additional things or choices, it creates more stress. And so if it really is the direction we can go, I think at least getting one tumbler fixed allows us then to kind of focus on what are the other challenges and problem solve there. And I think it'll just make for a more clear and transparent process for the community and for the board. So
Yeah.
that
I
would
have
be
one more
my
comment if I can.
Sure.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. Rick, you just mentioned the educational benefits of this. I just want to make sure we as a board and a district are not being tone deaf to what parents may consider not educational benefits. So, as we're addressing the positives, I think we need to make sure we're aware of the concerns as a part of that as well.
Well stated. And I think that's where we would want to, and I think that's where this time will give us the ability to engage our families on that, to see if they're in alignment.
But Rick, I know part of this is for planning for next year and staffing. There's a lot of implications, but what I'm hearing all of us are saying is that 2022 makes sense. There's obviously some more digging and, bringing some stakeholders in and sharing, but I think we're all saying 2022 makes sense, especially since that's your recommendation.
Okay.
Is that enough for you, Rick, to kind of do what you need to do next step-wise and start planning for all that?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it really does thread together. I think, Mike, your concern, and then Steve, what you just said is by you giving us direction, having the community hear that, getting it into the Pierce County Journal, now gives us the opportunity to send it out in the newsletter. And, with maybe some additional times to meet with families, they'll know that we're considering it. If they are concerned, obviously they'll reach out, but we will make a specific point to communicate and then hold either Zoom meetings or face-to-face meetings with families to get their input as well.
Yeah. And at some point, and it doesn't have to be next month, but at some point in the near future, and we'll let you guys kind of decide when you need that answer by, it should come back to the board for approval, I think. Is that fair?
Sure.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Let's move on to
Michael and Sarah, thank you.
Item 6, superintendent update on COVID-19.
Nope.
Tasks.
Oh, did I
We
miss
actually
the
have
one?
we have some
Academic programming?
we have some sub-bullets on this.
Oh.
So with the third grade,
Sorry.
we wanted just to make sure that
5-2.
Tier 3, Mike.
yeah, there was kind of, we want to clarify, and let me just get this slide back up. And Pat, you had asked what comes next, and so the academic portion and the facility doesn't require a capital investment to address that. What the referendum for us as we move forward, we're in January 2021. The board earlier tonight declared that they are going to be going for a referendum February of 2022. What we see is that Mike and I, through the summer projects and the work that he has to do on a day-to-day basis, will really tax him based on the work that we know is going to be needed to occur. We are looking to be able to come back to you with a request for proposals to identify a potential construction management and project manager, so that by April, the board could identify and select a project manager to assist us in the process. One would be to then, in May and June, to be able to kind of have a facilities finance committee that would meet. And again, this is for you to give me feedback, but we were thinking either meet monthly to develop priorities and then subcommittees that could meet monthly and present findings with regards to kind of what they learned from the project manager and reviewing the SDS essential needs. We would continue that engagement through July and August, understanding that summer is a little bit sometimes more challenging for people to kind of be consistent. On the second row, we would be looking, now that you've identified that February 2022, you're targeting for a capital referendum, you have to specify and pass a referendum both with the cost and have it approved by December. So what we would be looking at is kind of that September, October of a stakeholder group, still to be defined, right? We'll talk about who we should be putting in the stakeholder engagement, that they would be able to see our buildings, come in, look at the projects, but also have somebody from a construction management side be able to act as a third party and give Mike some relief so that we can look at if we're going to do all 3 roofs concurrently. We know that Malone Elementary has 1/3 or a quarter of one of the areas that still needs an air handler update. We weren't able to do that in 2018. How do you tie those programs together, or projects together, and is there some efficiencies? How much of the work can be done in summer of 2022 or beyond? So that is kind of what and why we think a project manager would be essential, but they also then can assist us with being in the intermediary of kind of a neutral third party, talking about the scope of the work, the number of years that it might take, and what seasons it would occur. So any thoughts or feedback on, would you be comfortable with that? I think it would be, in talking with Mike, I think it would be prudent to get that out there, and it would be a very helpful process so that we could write somebody that is in the business to write the bids, that upon approval, we would have them ready to go out to contractors to do the work in summer of 2022 or fall.
I have a
Pat,
couple
you want to start
comments.
this one? Any
Yeah.
questions?
And this may not be important, I just, so, you know, construction manager, I was confused when I read this out of our prep materials. We're looking to hire on an owner's representative to act on our behalf, not necessarily a construction manager who will hold contracts or you know, contract with the design team. It's somebody to work on our behalf to advise us, you know, how we're going to move forward. So that completely makes sense. We should do that as soon as possible. Would this person then also be, we'll call it responsible for developing our path forward, our work plan forward, putting the facility finance, the committees together, and you know, laying out a strategic direction? I mean, you got some good information on here on a timeline, but
Yeah, I think
obviously
they would
there's
help.
a lot of the details that need to be
Yeah, I think
filled
they
in.
would help coordinate it with us. Most definitely, I think that the one point is we would like, and that was for the RFP, we would like somebody, like you just said, it would be an owner's representative. We would prefer that they would be non-performing, but we could also separate that would be a preference given. So we've gone through different experiences, and I think by having owner's representative that would be kind of looking out for our best interest and help us plan for the work, but then once the work's ongoing, assist Mike in verifying that it's meeting the standard or exceeding the standards that we want as well.
Anything else, Pat?
Well, just, again, I think the RFP for this person is really, really important, and I guess there's a work effort right there potentially with the board to decide what is gonna be their role, you know, and what are we trying to accomplish. I mean, we keep talking about, you know, getting out to February and there's a potential referendum for a roof. How do we know it's for a roof? How do we know it's not for, I don't wanna freak anybody out, a whole new building? If that's what we decide as a community and as a board, you know, needs to be on there. So I wanna make sure that we're thinking about this, you know, in the right way, and we're not just chugging ahead down a path that we think already exists.
Well, all I would say is I think that we have done our due diligence already and had an architect and an engineering firm identify what is essential, right? I can tell you the roof is essential, and we have pictures to show you. And I think that what we need is, at this point, the community has told us they're not ready for anything beyond that. They are looking for, you have 4 buildings, and sustain those 4 buildings. And I think that's what we need, a project manager and an owner's representative to assist us with.
I don't know, that I respectfully disagree with a little bit of that. I don't know we've taken that yet to the level it needs to be, to say that we've gotten community input on what they would support or not support. I think we've got a pretty good idea, but I don't think that we've gotten there yet.
So, and I think that you have, maybe that comes out of a different option as we get the facility and finance committee together. You know, I think when we work with Teamworks, they always said, come back with kind of 3 different options and have something that, you know, may manifest and come out of this group that surprises all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So to that point, I mean, Pat has a great point. But I'll add to that to say you've got stakeholder engagement in September, October. I think that's way too late. They should be engaged. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It would, May, June is what we're looking. It was more for the, being able to have that stakeholder engagement come to the board during the months of September and October.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that. I misunderstood. I would just add one thing. You know, we've had comments about trying to get stakeholders together, and you know, COVID, and you know, understanding those difficulties. But I think we've all proven that we've got technology that we can pull a group together and have meetings on a very regular basis. So I don't think that should be anything to hold us up. You know, reaching out to certain people, yeah, it's a little more difficult. You can't necessarily meet them at Patax or whatever, but you know, I just don't want that to be a roadblock. So just keep that in mind as if Kyle's in the audience, just trying to load something else on your to-do list. But
he does it well.
He does. That's why I have full faith that we can get this done no matter what the circumstances are outside of our control.
All right, Tanya, you have any comments or questions on this?
No, I mean, this is not my area. I totally trust you guys. I think that my biggest concern is to make sure that we have stakeholders involved early. Pat, I think we do have a lot of information from the community with that survey that we did, and it's not fine-tuned necessarily to tell us exactly what would be approved, what wouldn't be approved. But one thing I think was really clear about it is that the community needs more and more communication and involvement with these kinds of things, education. And I know we're trying to do it, and but I think directly having them involved and inviting people in is really, really important. So I see that looks like to begin in May and June. I don't know if you want a board member on there. In the past we have. I believe in our policy, or we have to kind of post those meetings and agendas and stuff like that, so that might look a little different than what we've done in the past. But yeah, this project manager or owner's manager, whatever that is, that sounds great too. But I know I mean, to be honest, we've struggled with that in the past, where we maybe not gotten what we were hoping to get from something, and it's been difficult for us. And so I think that is an important role. And maybe, like Pat's saying, the definition of that is where we really begin. But
Vicki, any questions or comments from you?
No, this is gonna be a whole new learning experience for me, so at this point, I'm just listening and trying to take it all in.
Okay, Maddie, any questions, comments?
No comment.
You want to be our owner's representative?
I think I'll.
All right, good discussion. Anything else? Anybody? I like the layout of the timeline. Obviously, there's some things that we'll refine and tweak here, but it's generally a good starting point, and it's it'll get refined, and it's gonna be a good process, I think. All right, Rick. So does that conclude 5, or do we got this?
Nope, that wraps it up. We'll be, like I mentioned, we'll make this a standing item every month, and we'll be coming back for that, and we can tweak the RFP as needed so that it can get out there and make sure that we have that representation.
Okay. All right, item 6, superintendent update on COVID-19 and impact on the district.
Yes, so I've asked for our nurse, who is back with us after the new year here, and welcomed a new member to her family, so congratulations to Cassie. Good to have you back. But I'm going to post up your newsletter. What we wanted to do is obviously 3 big things. We wanted to give an update with regards to just kind of the current rates of COVID, how it's still impacting us, understanding that there is a vaccine out there, and give you a little bit of information about how that is going to be distributed. Exact timelines not nailed down yet, but we have some updates. And then we also wanted to inform people a little bit about the facts and myths with regards to the vaccine. And then we'll talk about how it impacts both academics and our athletics. And so Matt Smith will be joining Cassie in a minute. So welcome, Cassie.
Thank you. We also have AZ. Do you want her first?
Why don't we start with your nurses update, nurses corner, and then we'll have AZ kind of come in, and I'll have that slide that you and Matt put together.
Okay. So in the nurses newsletter, we broke down the close contact quarantines a little bit. 4K, the only option for them is the 14-day quarantine, and that's age dependent. They can't adequately self-report, so we're relying on parents. They can't social distance at all, just based on age. So that was set out by the county and the state that 4K doesn't apply. We as a district decided to go K through 5 for giving them the 10-day option, or the 10-day quarantine, return on day 11, or the 14-day option, and that is again, we based it on age and developmental appropriateness. We really looked at our classes and what we thought was appropriate, and that's talking with Sarah and Michael. That's where we fell. And then we did leave the 7-day option out there for 6 through 12. And this really was focused on academics and how we can get those kids here, keep them here safely. And that would be when we're in hybrid, that we feel that we can safely do that.
Okay.
WIAA,
We'll hold that. I'm going to bring up
Okay.
your slide,
Okay.
and then you can have, is AZ able to hear us, and is she on?
Yep, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Okay. Cassie, you want to just introduce AZ, and I hear you just finished with Elmwood, is that right?
Yeah, so that's AZ Steiner. She's the director of Pierce County Public Health.
Hi, everyone. So first I want to say thank you for allowing me to come crash your party tonight. And I also want to say thank you so much to Dr. Spikuza, Cassie, and Mel. You know, this has been a heck of a year for public health, and I can say that every interaction we have with the Prescott team makes our lives easier and our jobs more manageable. So thank you so much for the absolutely wonderful partnership we've had with the Prescott School District. I'm never going to forget working that very first case, second case in the state of Wisconsin with you guys. That was something I'm never going to forget. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about quarantine options. As you know, the CDC has given us some alternative quarantine options, and Wisconsin DHS has adopted those options. A lot of the public is very confused about how these options work, what the risk is, and then what the best way to go is. And I'm here today to just explain what the risk level is for each of the options so that we can each make informed decisions on behalf of our families and the Prescott School District. So the 3 quarantine options are: number 1, 14 days. This is the hands down best option when it comes to reducing transmission of COVID-19. Nothing about the incubation period of the virus has changed. Many people will still test positive or develop symptoms on day 13 or 14. The second option is a 10-day quarantine. So you're exposed on day 0, you remain asymptomatic the entire time, and you can be released on day 11, back to school or work. This represents a risk. It's somewhere between 1 and 10% of a residual risk according to CDC modeling data compared to the 14-day quarantine. The third option is the most risky. So that involves you're exposed on day 0, you get tested for COVID-19 on day 6 or 7, and if it is negative, you can be released to school or work on day 8. This option, as I said, can be quite risky, especially if it's an antigen test rather than a PCR test, and represents somewhere between 5 and 12% residual transmission risk based on CDC modeling data. I'm really mad at CDC that they didn't disaggregate their modeling data by age, because I'm always really curious if there's something different about the school age population than the general population. Unfortunately, that data isn't currently available to us.
And AZ, as a district, we do require the PCR test on day 6 or 7.
Good, yes. We want it. That is definitely public health's recommendation. The antigen test is not FDA approved for testing with asymptomatic people, so people that aren't having any symptoms of COVID-19. Many providers are doing it anyway, including the UW system, but that is an off-label use. We also know that of symptomatic people who are truly positive for COVID-19, antigen testing will only correctly identify 4 out of 5 of them. So it misses about potentially 20% of the people that are truly symptomatic and positive. So we would suspect that with asymptomatic populations, it may be even less of an accuracy rate. So I'm very supportive and happy that you went with that. Another thing I want to explain is that not all close contacts are of equal risk. So we know, based on CDC data and anecdotal experience from both the school district and the health department, that the risk of a child whose parent is symptomatic and positive for COVID-19 in their household, the risk for that child developing COVID-19 is very different than the risk of a child who sat next to someone with COVID-19 before they were identified. Maybe they weren't 6 feet apart, maybe they were 4 feet apart, but they were wearing masks the entire time, and there was good hand washing happening in schools. So a recent CDC study really confirmed this information, that people who are in households with cases are really at the highest risk for infection, and the people that we need to be most concerned about when it comes to shortened quarantine. So the study revealed, and it was a relatively small study in 2 states, but it revealed that among persons who were exposed to COVID-19 in the household, who were asymptomatic all the way up until day 7 and had negative tests all the way through day 7, 19% of those people tested positive or developed symptoms between day 8 and 14. So what that tells us is, if we use that negative testing method among people who are household contacts of people that have COVID-19, around 20% of them may develop symptoms or test positive and become infectious after they've been released to school or work. So while a shortened quarantine period might make it easier for us to achieve compliance and might encourage people to get tested, it is really important that we do everything we can to comply with non-pharmaceutical interventions when people do take advantage of that shortened quarantine. So socially distance the best we can, make sure we're really good about masking, hand washing, and most importantly, symptom monitoring. So again, I'm just here today to make sure that the school district understands that there is associated risk for both of these shortened quarantine options. Not saying you can't do it. We want to keep as many kids in school in person as possible. It is vital for the health of our kids as well as the health of our local economy. However, we really need to make sure that we are educating parents as well as our entire community that there are risks associated with these options. They need to comply with non-pharmaceutical interventions to the best of their ability if they comply with shortened quarantine, specifically that symptom monitoring piece. They need to remain asymptomatic for the entire 14 days and need to be monitoring through the entire 14 days. And lastly, again, household contacts really appear to be at the very highest risk for transmission of COVID-19. So if we do have a household contact that returns to school early, we need to do the best we possibly can about making sure that they're being careful.
Thank you. The reason Cassie has been on every Wednesday is on a conference call with AZ and the other school nurses in Pierce County. And also we have some overflow with athletics and then WIA. And so I wanted Matt to kind of come forward. And as you heard, there's been a lot of confusion. And so you can see even on our graphic, we've broken out academics and athletics. We've broken it out by grade level. We have WIA that reversed its recommendation. And so Matt's going to come forward, and we're just heading into the athletic competitions for wrestling, then girls basketball, and then boys basketball. And probably we got caught in a whiplash effect of a change that was made in athletics that really wasn't supported from CDC, the Wisconsin Department of Health, and Pierce County. We are in the midst of it, and I wanted to kind of share that I think winter, we've learned our lessons. Spring, because the sports are different and they're outdoors, we feel comfortable with kind of the recommendations, and obviously AZ, you're here to kind of intercede or give your opinion. But Matt, do you want to just start with the column 3 and then go to column 4?
Yeah, looking at close contacts with what we're looking at for quarantine, when CDC came out with the 7-day quarantine return on day 8, we did follow suit with that. For athletics, they could test a PCR test day 6 or 7. Obviously had to be symptom-free, and if negative, they were then cleared for day 8 return. They can go the 10-day without a test as long as they're symptom-free. And there's been families that have opted for that. There's been families that have opted for the 7-day quarantine. And then the 14 days, if the symptoms there and whatnot, that the standard, I guess you could say, and the safest quarantine there is the 14-day.
And I do want to clarify, because we have put the academics and the athletics, right? Mm-hmm. So the 7-day CDC, they did have some stipulations if you came back on 7 days. And that's one reason why we're in the midst of the winter, which is more contact or close contact. In spring, we're going to be doing track, girls
more
softball.
Distance outside, yes, it'll be safer.
So some of the parameters, if I'm not mistaken, it was supposed to be that still there was 6 feet of distance and mass to be able to use the 7-day, and that's why we're comfortable at the academic level, because we're in hybrids, we have 50% of the population, we are spacing kids out, and they are mass. The winter sports are coming to an end, and we didn't start with the 7 days. That was something that got interjected in the midst of the season. But we know that anytime there's confusion, people latch onto documents, and we wanted to be crystal clear that it goes out of our hands starting January 30th. So do you want to just walk us through, Matt, with regards to WI rules govern 100% of the districts and the tournaments, and what's their protocol?
Yeah, the WIA, our governing body, the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association, which oversees our tournaments that our wrestlers and our boys and girls basketball players will be participating in. They came out and their board said it's 14-day quarantine if you're a close contact regardless, across the board. And that backdates. So right now, technically, by date, all of our wrestlers to participate are, right now, if they were to be a close contact, they would not be able to participate in regionals on January 30th because their countdown already started from the quarantine of 14. Similar with the boys and girls basketball team is we're about a week out here from our girls and 2 weeks out from our boys. So, it is I don't want to say nerve-wracking, but it is a little bit that I lose some sleep over that if, we were to have, looking at our close contact and how we do that, a team season could come to a halt based on bad luck or wrong place, wrong time, or, just something occurring that we have to do that. So that's looking at the WA, and that's what they put out. And in order to play in their tournament, we have to play by those rules, and we have to abide by that.
And to that end, Matt and I shared a letter that's been drafted. The first sentence might have to be changed because up to this point, we really didn't have. We've kind of navigated the waters pretty well. The reason we wanted to share that letter with you and understand is you can see that as we get closer to tournament, right, and as Matt said, wrestlers are already under the 14-day bubble. When the letter goes out, you may hear from parents, you may hear from the athletes, and we wanted to be clear, again, this is a WIA sanctioned. In order for us to participate, our rules don't apply.
And our coaches, our head coaches are aware, they understand, they've been briefed on it, and they know, and I think you're definitely going to see them, they've been safe throughout this entire season, and, there's obviously been some hiccups, but I think they're going to be very more aware of it as we do hit. No one wants to see the season end, because of something that occurs in that, that range there.
And then spectators, this is something that's new, and so we wanted to make sure people heard.
Yep, met with the middle border, athletic directors, talked to some other teams in the conference, and the WA also, similar to volleyball this fall, to host a postseason event, you have to allow equal access to the visiting team and the home team. So for volleyball, when we hosted Ellsworth for playoffs, we had to be equal opportunity for Prescott fans and Ellsworth fans to be able to host. And so far for winter season, we've just been home fans. And then starting this week, the middle border opened up to visiting fans, 2 per player for anyone participating at that level. Then they're asking to clear the gym in between contests to make sure everyone's being safe and social distancing appropriately in the gym. And so we don't have any home games this week due to a quarantine. But starting next week, we're going to look to kind of hit the ground running with that and allow visiting fans to come into our gym. Like I said, as we're gearing up for postseason here, that's going to be the expectation. So we kind of want to take that trial run and give those opportunities and be able to do that in a safe, controlled manner. So we're able to do that. So it does have to be, once we hit postseason, it does have to be equal for whether it's 4 fans and 4 fans, 2 fans and 2 fans, 3 fans and 3, but it has to be equal there and what we do with that. So that'll be starting next week, and I can give you any updates on that. I'll keep Rick in the loop with that. If any concerns, kind of what's going well as we move forward with that.
And Matt, we're starting with 2 and 2. If that goes well, what do you see our cap being?
I could see going to 4 and 2, 4 and 4 potentially.
Okay.
Yep. If we can do everything safely, which I feel we can, and the spectators understand they have a responsibility to be safe and to do that, because one false move can ruin it for a lot of people. So that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking to do. Majority of the middle border here, has talked about it and how we move forward there, doing things safely. I should say the majority, all of the middle border, understanding what we need to do in surrounding Western Wisconsin also.
Okay. Any questions for AZ, Cassie, or Matt?
John, you have any questions on anything that was shared?
I am so ready for all this stuff to be done, but yeah, I know, this is really hard on our students, our athletes, our families, our community. So I just want to get us through to spring when we have some more opportunity to be outside, where we can social distance better, and I hope we get there. I did have one question about our change in quarantine procedures, and so the 7-day one, and I'm hearing what AZ is saying, that there's a difference between home exposure and kind of living in a house with somebody that has tested positive versus being next to Mike Matzik here. And so I'm just wondering why we're not separating in our quarantining practice or our policy, or I guess it's more of a practice, that if it's a home exposure, they maybe have the 14 days or the 10 days or whatever, but if it's a school exposure, that's different. And I'm just wondering the thought behind why we didn't separate those.
And there is an asterisk, and
Oh, is
that's
it?
where
Okay.
Cassie, and that's where the contact tracing, but Cassie,
Okay.
you can explain it better.
Yeah, so in the nursing newsletter, I separated the 7, 10, and 14 for close contacts from school. And then the next portion is household contacts. A lot of that depends on how they can quarantine within the home. So it really is case by case, and it's me and Mel working with AZ and her team to figure out when they were last exposed to the positive individual at home, and then counting their days from that.
So in some cases, it might be the full quarantine just based on.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
And then, and I guess one of my questions following up was, I know that there's HIPAA and all that stuff, so we can't really identify, but I'm wondering if there is a significant risk of a difference with the way you're exposed or the situation you're living within, if we had a responsibility to inform families any different or not. But it sounds like you guys are kind of weeding through that individually, and some families will have the 7 and some will have the 10 or 14 based on all of those things. Okay. Great, no questions then. I really hope our athletes can continue with their seasons, and I know this is that crunch period where they're probably really relying on all of their community members, their classmates, their parents to make really good decisions so they can get to that end line, and some of them have worked really hard for that. So I think we've said it more than once, that even though we know that there's a vaccination on the horizon there, we really still owe it to our kids to stay really diligent and give them all those chances that they can. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you, AZ, for being here.
And then, Cassie, you want to just give a minute update on the vaccinations for our staff?
Yeah, so Pierce County is, we've gone through Group 1A. We've had 13 staff members already get their first dose. We're just a couple weeks away from them getting their second dose. Pierce County started on Group 1B this week with fire and police. We are hopeful that within the next month, we'll start to do school staff. That hasn't been defined by the state yet, so we are still kind of playing the waiting game. But we're definitely trying to make plans and prepare so that we can get this done as fast as we can. AZ and her team have been great. They're great to plan with. I really expect a smooth rollout for that. I do, even with the vaccines being completed for the majority of our staff, masking we foresee that being an all-year thing, for sure. Vaccines right now are not approved for kids under 16, so our student body, the majority of them will not be vaccinated this school year.
And where will the vaccinations occur for staff?
So right now there's been mobile clinics for the smaller groups. Once we have the entire staff body, it'll be somewhere in Prescott at one of our sites.
And then on the 15th, we were asked by the Department of Health from Wisconsin if we would partner with our other educational units. And I've reached out to St. Joe's, Chris McGee, and our 2 child care centers. They've all agreed. And so when we are operational, hopefully in February, then we'll be working with the St. Joe's staff and Hearts, Hands, and Minds and New Adventures.
Yes, and the partnership with them has gone great so far.
All right. Thank you.
Steve, I know Rick asked all your questions. Do you have any other ones?
No, I think they've all been covered. Thanks for joining the meeting, everyone.
Pat?
No, thanks for joining. No questions right now.
All right, and I agree. AZ, thanks for joining us and giving us the rundown. That was very appreciated. And thanks, Cassie.
Thanks, Matt.
And Matt. Don't want to forget Mr. Smith. All right. Great update. Let's move on. Item H is recognition of visitors. Is there anybody that would care to be recognized? I don't think there's anybody online either. All right, we'll move to motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night, guys. Thanks.
Good night.